Welcome back to Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. This is chapters 10 through 13. Chapter 10. All my resistance to putting Stargirl on hot seat vanished. Okay, I said to Kevin, let's do it. Schedule her. He started off. I grabbed his arm. Wait, ask her first. He laughed. Right, like she's gonna say no. No one had ever said no to the hot seat. Any reluctance to answering personal or embarrassing questions always yielded to the lure of appearing on TV. If anyone could resist that lure, I figured it would be Stargirl. That day after school, Kevin came at me thumbs up and grinning. It's a go, she said yes. At first, I was surprised. This didn't fit my impression of her. I didn't know that this was the early glimpse of something I was soon to see much more of. Behind the dazzling talents and differentness, she was far more normal than I had realized. Then I was elated. We yipped, we high-fived, we saw visions of our most popular show ever. This was mid-January. We set the date of February 13th, the day before Valentine's. We wanted a full month for build-up. With my resistance now gone, I jumped in with both feet. We planned a promo campaign. We got art students to do posters. We jotted down questions for Kevin to ask in case the jury ran out. Fat chance of that happening. We didn't have to post the usual jury notice. Dozens of kids volunteered. And then things changed again. In the courtyard of our school stood a 5-foot sheet of plywood in the shape of a roadrunner. It was a bulletin board strictly for student use, always taped intact with messages and announcements. One day, we found the following computer printout taped to the plywood roadrunner. I pledge allegiance to the United Turtles of America and to the fruit bats of Borneo, one planet in the Milky Way, incredible, with justice and black bean burritos for all. Handwritten across the bottom were the words, "This is how she says the Pledge of Allegiance." No one had to tell us who she was. Apparently, she was overheard in homeroom as we said the pledge each morning. As far as I knew, we were not a particularly patriotic bunch. I didn't hear people saying they were offended. Some thought it was funny. Some giggled and nodded knowingly, as if to say, there she goes again. On the following mornings, more than one kid was heard reciting the new pledge. Within days, a news story wildfired through the student body. A senior girl, Anna Grisdale, lost her grandfather after a long illness. The funeral took place on a Saturday morning. For a while, everything seemed routine. The crowd of people at the church, the line of cars with their headlights on. The smaller group clustered around the grave for the final farewell. After the brief graveside service, the funeral director handed everyone a long-stemmed flower. Upon leaving, each mourner laid his or her flower over the casket. This was when Anna Grisdale first noticed Stargirl. Through her own tears, Anna could see that Stargirl was crying also. She wondered if Stargirl had been at the church as well. Even more, she wondered why Stargirl was there at all. Could she have been friends with her grandfather without Anna's knowing it? Anna's mother asked her who the unfamiliar girl was. Afterward, the mourners were invited to Anna's house for lunch. About 30 came. There was a buffet of cold cuts and salads and cookies. Stargirl was there, chatting with members of family but not eating or drinking anything. Suddenly, Anna heard her mother's voice. It was no louder than the others, but it was different. "What are you doing here?" Sudden stillness. Everyone staring. They were in front of the picture window. Anna had never seen her mother so angry. Mrs. Grisdale had been very close to her father. They had built an addition to their house so they could live with him. She glared down at Stargirl. "Answer me." Stargirl gave no reply. "You didn't even know him, did you?" Still, Stargirl said nothing. "Did you?" And then Anna's mother was flinging open the front door and pointing as if banishing her to the desert. "Leave my house." Stargirl left. Danny Pike was 9 years old. He loved to ride the bicycle he had gotten for his birthday. One day after school, he lost control and plowed into a mailbox. He broke his leg, but that wasn't the worst of it. A blood clot developed. He was airlifted to Children's Hospital in Phoenix, where he was operated on. For a while, it was touch and go, but within a week, he was on his way back home. All this was reported in the Micah Times, as was the celebration when Danny arrived at his home on Pinion Lane. The 5-column photo in the Times showed Danny on his father's shoulders, surrounded by a mob of neighbors. In the foreground was a new bike and a big sign that read, "Welcome home, Danny." It wasn't until days later that the front page photos appeared on the Plywood Roadrunner. We gathered around to see something we hadn't noticed before. An arrow from a thick red felt tip marker pointed at one of the tiny faces crowded into the frame. It was the face of a girl, beaming as if Danny Pike were her little brother back from the dead. It was Stargirl. And then there was the bike. The various members of the Pike family, parents, grandparents, et al., each thought someone else had bought Danny the new bicycle. Several days went by before they discovered, to their great surprise, that none of them had. So where did the bike come from? High schoolers who heard the story and saw the pictures had a pretty good idea. Apparently the Pikes did not. The bike became the focus of a family squabble. Mr. Pike was mad because nobody he asked would admit to buying the bike, and probably because he hadn't done it himself. Mrs. Pike was mad because no way, not for at least 1 year, would she allow Danny back on wheels. One night, the new, still unridden bike wound up at the Pike's front curb with the trash cans. By the time the trash collector came the next day, it was gone. Danny got a BB gun instead. The Pledge of Allegiance, the Grisdale funeral, the Danny Pike affair, these things were noted, but they had no immediate impact on Stargirl's popularity at school. Not so with cheerleading in the boys' basketball season. Chapter 11. During the first quarter of each home game, Stargirl went over to the visitors section and gave them a cheer. She began with an exaggerated ball-bouncing motion. Dribble, dribble. Sis boom bibble. We don't bite. We don't nibble. We just say, sweeping wave, "Howdy, friends." 2 thumbs pointing to her chest. "We're the electrons." Points to them. "Who are you?" Turns head to side, cups ear. A couple of visiting cheerleaders, maybe a fan or two, would call back, "Wildcats," or "Cougars," or whatever, but most of them just gaped at her as if to say, "Who is this?" Some of her fellow cheerleaders were amused. Some were mortified. At that point, the only crime Stargirl could have been accused of would be corniness. But she didn't stop there. She cheered whenever the ball went in the basket, regardless of which team shot it. It was the strangest sight. The other team scores, the Maz crowd sits glumly on their hands while Stargirl, alone, pops up cheering. At first, the other cheerleaders tried to suppress her. It was like trying to calm down a puppy. When they gave her the pleated skirt, they made a cheerleader they never imagined. She did not limit herself to basketball games. She cheered anyone, anything, anytime. She cheered the big things, honors, election winners, but she gave most of her attention to little things. You never knew when it would happen. Maybe you were a 9th grade nobody named Eddie. As you're walking down the hall, you see a candy wrapper on the floor. You pick it up and throw it in the nearest trash can, and suddenly, there she is in front of you, pumping her arms, her honey hair and freckles flying, swallowing you whole with those enormous eyes, belting out a cheer she's made up on the spot. Something about, "Eddie, Eddie and the trash can teaming up to wipe out litter." A mob is gathering, clapping hands in rhythm. More eyes on you than all of the previous days of your life combined. You feel foolish, exposed, stupid. You want to follow the candy wrapper into the trash can. It's the most painful thing that's ever happened to you. Your brain keeps squirting out a single thought. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And so, when she finally finishes and her freckles settle back into the bridge of her nose, why don't you? Why don't you just die? Because they're clapping for you, that's why. And whoever heard of dying while they're clapping for you? And they're smiling at you. People who never even saw you before are smiling at you and slapping your back and pumping your hand. And suddenly it seems like the whole world is calling your name. And you're feeling so good, you pretty much just float on home from school. And when you go to bed that night, the last thing you see before you zonk out are those eyes, and the last thing on your face is a smile. Or maybe you showed up at school with really unusual earrings, or you aced a test, or broke your arm, or got your braces off. Or maybe you weren't even a person. Maybe you were a charcoal drawing on the wall done by an art whiz, or a really neat looking bug out by the bike rack. We wagged our heads and agreed what a goofy girl this was, maybe even officially crazy. But we walked away smiling and maybe not saying, but all thinking the same thing. It felt good to get credit. And if this had been any other year, things might have just gone on like that. But this was the year that something unbelievable was happening on the basketball court. This year, the team was winning, only winning. And that changed everything. Early in the season, no one noticed. Except for girls' tennis, we had never had good teams in anything. We expected to lose. We were comfortable with losing. In fact, most of us were oblivious to it since we didn't even attend the games. The year before, the basketball Electrons had won only 5 of 26 games. This year, they won their 5th game before Christmas. By early January, they had won the 10th. And people began to notice that there was still a 0 in the loss column. Undefeated, blared a sign on the plywood roadrunner. Some said we were winning by accident. Some said other teams were simply more rotten than we were. Some thought the sign was a joke. One thing was certain, attendance went up. By the start of February, the winning streak had reached 16, and there wasn't an empty seat in the gym. But something even more interesting was happening. Suddenly, we were no longer comfortable with losing. In fact, we forgot how to lose. The transformation was stunning in its speed. There was no apprenticeship period, no learning curve. No one had to teach us how to be winners. One day, we were bored, indifferent, satisfied losers. The next, we were rabid fanatics, stomping in the grandstand, painting our faces green and white, doing the wave as if we had been perfecting it for years. We fell in love with our team. When we spoke of it, we used the word we instead of they. The leading scorer, Brent Ardsley, seemed to have a golden glow about him as he moved through the school. And the more we loved our team, the more we hated the opposition. We used to envy them. We even applauded them to spite our own hapless teams. Now we detested the opposition and everything about them. We hated their uniforms. We hated their coaches and their fans. We hated them because they were trying to spoil our perfect season. We resented every point scored against us. And how dare they celebrate? We began to boo. It was our first experience as booers, but you'd have thought we were veterans. We booed the other team. We booed the other coach. We booed the other fans, the referees, whatever threatened our perfect season. We booed it. We even booed the scoreboard. We hated games that went down to the wire. We hated suspense. We loved games that were decided in the first 5 minutes. We wanted more than victories. We wanted massacres. The only score we would have been totally happy with would have been 100-0. And right there in the middle of it all, in the midst of this perfect season mania, was Stargirl, popping up whenever the ball went through the net, no matter which team scored, cheering everything and everybody. It was sometime in January when calls started flying from the stands. Sit down! Then came the boos. She didn't seem to notice. She did not seem to notice. Of all the unusual features of Stargirl, this struck me the most as remarkable. Bad things did not stick to her. Correction. Her bad things did not stick to her. Our bad things stuck very much to her. If we were hurt, if we were unhappy, or otherwise victimized by life, she seemed to know about it and to care, as soon as we did. But bad things falling on her, unkind words, nasty stares, foot blisters, she seemed unaware of. I never saw her look in a mirror, never heard her complain. All of her feelings, all of her attentions flowed outward. She had no ego. The 19th game of the basketball season was played at Red Rock. In previous years, cheerleaders had outnumbered Micah fans at away games. Not now. The convoy rolling across the desert that evening stretched for a couple of miles. By the time we were seated, there was barely room for the home team fans. It was the worst slaughter of the year. Red Rock was helpless. By the start of the fourth quarter, we were ahead, 78-29. The coach put in the subs. We booed. We smelled 100 points. We wanted blood. The coach put the starters back in. As we howled and thundered in the stands, Stargirl got up and walked from the gym. Those of us who noticed assumed she was going to the restroom. I kept glancing toward the exit. She never returned. With 5 seconds left in the game, the Electrons scored the 100th point. We went nuts. Stargirl had been outside the whole time, chatting with the bus driver. The other cheerleaders asked her why she left. She said she felt sorry for the Red Rock players. She felt her cheering was only making the massacre worse. Such games were no fun, she said. Your job isn't to have fun, they told her. Your job is to cheer for Micah High no matter what. She just stared at them. The team and the cheerleaders rode the same bus. When the players came out from the locker room, the cheerleaders told them what had happened. They devised a trick. They told Stargirl that someone had forgotten something in the gym, and would she please go get it. With Stargirl gone, they told the bus driver everyone was aboard, and the bus made the 2-hour return trip without her. A Red Rock custodian drove her home that night. The next day in school, the cheerleaders told her it was all a big misunderstanding and acted as if they were sorry. She believed them. The next day was February 13th, the hot seat. Chapter 12. This is how Hot Seat went. It took place in the Communications Center studio. There were 2 chairs on stage, the infamous hot seat itself, painted red with flames running up the legs, and an ordinary chair for the host, Kevin. Off to the side were 2 rows of 6 chairs each, the second row higher than the first. This was where the jury sat. It was a jury in name only. The 12 members did not vote or render a verdict. Their job was to ask questions, to give the hot seat its heat. Ticklish questions, embarrassing questions, nosy questions, but not mean or hurtful questions. The idea was to make the subject squirm, not roast. In the spirit of mock inquisition, we called the subject the victim. And why would anyone want to be the victim? The lure of TV. The chance to confess or lie before a camera and before peers instead of parents. But I doubted the usual reasons applied to Stargirl. There were 3 cameras, one for the stage, one for the jury, and Chico. Chico was the handheld close-up camera. According to Mr. Robineau, our faculty advisor, a student named Chico once begged him to be a close-up camera kid. Mr. Robineau gave him a tryout, but Chico was so skinny he practically collapsed under the camera. The job went to someone else, and Chico went to the weight room. By the following year, Chico had muscles, and the camera was like nothing on his shoulder. He got the job, and he was brilliant at it. He gave the camera his own name, "We are one," he said. When he graduated, his name stayed behind. And from then on, the close-up camera and its operator were a unit called Chico. The host and the victim were each fitted with a thimble-sized clip-on mic. The jury passed around a hand mic. Opposite the stage was the glassed-in control room, sound insulated from the rest of the studio. That's where I worked, wearing my headset, watching the monitors, directing the shots. I stood at the shoulder of the technical director, or TD. He sat at a rack of buttons, punching up the shots I ordered. Also in the control room were the graphics and audio people. Mr. Robineau was there as a faculty overseer, but basically the students worked everything. Kevin's job was to get things started, intro the victim, ask a few opening questions, stir things up if the jury was slow. Usually the jury was on the ball. Typical questions. Does it bother you that you're so short? Is it true that you like so-and-so? Do you wish you were good looking? How often do you take a shower? It almost always added up to entertainment. At the end of the half hour, as we cued credits and music, there was always a good feeling in the air, and everyone, victim, jury members, studio crew, mingled and became students again. We filmed the shows after school, then broadcast them that night, prime time on local cable. About 10,000 homes. Our own surveys said that at least 50% of the student body watched any given show. We outdrew most of the hot sitcoms. We expected to top 90% for the Stargirl show. But I had a secret. I wished no one would watch. In the months since we had scheduled the show, Stargirl's popularity had dropped out of sight. Gone were the ukuleles from the lunchroom. More and more kids saw her cheerleading behavior as undermining the basketball team and its perfect record. I was afraid the booze for her might spread from the court to the studio. I was afraid the show might turn ugly. When Stargirl came in that day after school, Kevin gave her the usual briefing while Mr. Robineau and I checked out the equipment. As the jury members straggled in, they were not clowning around or tapping on the stage as jurors usually did. They went right to their seats. Stargirl was the one tap dancing and mugging for the cameras with Cinnamon the rat licking her nose. Kevin was cracking up, but the faces of the jurors were grim. One of them was Hillary Kimball. My bad feeling got worse. I retreated to the control room and shut the door. I checked communications with the cameras. We were ready. Kevin and Stargirl took their seats. I took one last look through the plate glass that separated the set from the control room. For the next half hour, I would see the world through 4 monitors. "Okay, everybody," I announced. "Here we go." I cut the studio mic. I looked over my control room mates. "We all set?" Everyone nodded. Just then, Stargirl lifted one of Cinnamon's front paws and waved it at the control room and said in a squeaky voice, "Hi, Leo." I froze. I came unraveled. I didn't know she knew my name. I just stood there like a dummy. Finally, I wagged my fingers at the rat and mouthed the words, "Hi, Cinnamon." "Hi, Cinnamon," although they couldn't hear me on the other side of the glass. I took a deep breath. "Okay, ready music? Ready intro?" I paused. "Music? Intro?" This was the moment I lived for, launching the show. I was the director, the maestro. I called the shots. On the monitors before me, I watched the program unfold according to my commands. But on this day, the thrill was missing. I only felt a dark dread sneaking along the cables. "Greetings and welcome to Hot Seat." Kevin went through the opening spiel. Kevin loved to be on camera. He was ideal for a show like this, which made good use of his smirky grin and arching, "Did I really hear you say that?" eyebrows. He turned to Stargirl. Then, impromptu, he reached out and stroked the nose of Cinnamon, who was perched on Stargirl's shoulder. "Want to hold him?" she said. Kevin gave the camera a "should I" look. "Sure," he said. "Ready, Chico, rat," I said into my headset mic. "Ready" was always the first in the command sequence. Chico zoomed in. Chico. TD punched up Chico. The camera followed Cinnamon from Stargirl's hands to Kevin's. No sooner was the rat in Kevin's lap than it scampered up his chest and darted between two buttons on his shirt. Kevin yipped and squirmed. "It scratches!" "He has fingernails," Stargirl said calmly. "He won't hurt you." Chico nailed Cinnamon, poking its head out from between the two buttons. Mr. Rubber-Nose stuck a thumbs up in front of my face. Kevin gave the camera this "ain't I something" face. He turned again to Stargirl. "You know, ever since you showed up at school this year, we've been wanting to put you on the hot seat." Stargirl stared at him. She turned to the live camera. Her eyes were growing wider. Something was happening. And wider. "Chico," I barked. Chico moved in, crouching, giving it a little upshot. "Terrific. Closer," I said. Stargirl's wonder-struck eyes practically filled the screen. I checked the long-shot monitor. She was frozen, rigid, as if electrified to the chair. Someone smacked my shoulder. I turned. Mr. Robino was laughing, saying something. I lifted one earphone. "She's joking," he repeated. And suddenly I saw. She was taking hot seat literally. She was milking it for all it was worth, and judging from the blank stares of Kevin and the jury, Mr. Robino and I were the only ones who got the joke. Stargirl's hands were rising now from the arms of the hot seat. "Ready, one," I called. "One. Camera one." Not there at first, but getting it now. The long shot, nailing her as her hands came off the chair arms, fingers spread wide. You could almost see her fingertips smoking. "Hold it," I prayed. "Hold it." As if her terrified eyes swung down over the side of the chair, the hot seat saw the painted flames. Yikes! Her scream bent instrument dials like palms in a hurricane. The rat leaped from Kevin's shirt. The TV image quaked as my camera one man flinched, but he recovered and caught her standing now on the front edge of the stage, bending over with her rear in the camera, flapping her hand behind her, fanning her smoking fanny. Finally, Kevin got it. He went nuts. "One, pull back, get Kevin in it, ready." Kevin was doubled up, tipping out of his chair, on his knees on the stage. His laughter flooded the control room. The rat ran over his hands and hopped down a single stage step. "The rat!" I yelled. "Two, get the rat!" But Two couldn't get the rat because the rat was nosing around Two's feet and Two was bolting from his camera. "Chico, rat!" Chico dived. He was flat on the floor, feeding the live screen a brilliant shot of the rat heading over to the jury. The jury members scrambling, taking off, climbing onto their seats. Forget the readies. Things were happening too fast. The cameras were dancing, feeding the monitors. I barked commands. TD was punching his button rack like some hard rock keyboarder. Stargirl's pantomime remains the best I have ever seen. Mr. Robino kept squeezing my shoulder. As he said later, it was the greatest moment in hot seat history. But because of what followed, no audience would ever see it. Chapter 13. In less than a minute, everything returned to normal. Stargirl retrieved Cinnamon and sat back coolly in the hot seat, as if nothing had happened. Kevin's eyes twinkled. He was squirming. He couldn't wait to dig into the interview. Neither could the jury, but their eyes were not twinkling. Kevin forced himself to look serious. "So your name, Stargirl. It's pretty unusual." Stargirl gave him a blank look. Kevin was flustered. "Isn't it?" Stargirl shrugged. "Not to me." She's putting him on, I thought. "Chico," I said into my mic, stayed tight on her face. A voice was heard dimly off camera. Kevin turned. A jury member had spoken. "Jury mic up," I said. "Ready, two?" The mic was passed to Jennifer St. John. Two. The mic looked like a black ice cream cone before Jennifer's face. Her voice wasn't pleasant. What was wrong with the name your parents gave you? Stargirl turned slowly to Jennifer. She smiled. Nothing. It was a good name. What was it? Susan. So why did you drop it? Because I didn't feel like Susan anymore. So you just threw out Susan and named yourself Stargirl? No. Still smiling. No. Pocket Mouse. 12 pairs of eyes boggled. What? I named myself Pocket Mouse, Stargirl said breezily. Then Mud Pie. Then Hully Gully. Then Stargirl. Damon Ritchie snatched the mic from Jennifer St. John. So what's it gonna be next? Dog turd? Uh-oh, I thought. Here we go. Kevin jumped in. So, you change your name whenever you get tired of it? Whenever it doesn't fit anymore. I'm not my name. My name is something I wear. Like a shirt. It gets worn, I outgrow it, I change it. So why Stargirl? Oh, I don't know. She petted Cinnamon's nose with her fingertip. I was walking in the desert one night looking up at the sky like... She chuckled. How can you not look at the sky? And it just sort of came to me, fell onto me. Kevin looked up from his sheet of prepared questions. So what do your parents think? Are they sad you didn't keep Susan? No, it was almost their idea. When I started calling myself Pocket Mouse when I was little, they called me that too. And we just never went back. Another distant voice from the jury. I tapped the sound man. Jury mic, and keep all mics open. I hated to do it. It was Mike Ebersole. I said, do you love your country? Yes, she answered briskly. Do you love yours? Ebersole ignored her question. Why don't you say the Pledge of Allegiance right? She smiled. Sounds right to me. Sounds like you're a traitor to me. Jurors were only supposed to ask questions, not make statements. A hand reached into the picture and grabbed the mic from Ebersole. Becca Rinaldi's angry face appeared on camera too. Why do you cheer for the other team? Stargirl seemed to be thinking it over. I guess because I'm a cheerleader. I glanced at Mr. Robineau. He was turned away from the monitors. He was staring straight at the set through the control room window. Stargirl was leaning forward, looking earnestly at Becca Rinaldi, her voice small as a little girl's. When the other team scores a point and you see how happy it makes all their fans, doesn't it make you happy too? Becca growled. No. Doesn't it make you want to join in? No. Don't you ever want the other team to be happy too? No. Stargirl seemed genuinely surprised. You don't always want to be the winner, do you? Becca scowled at her, jutted out her jaw. Yes. Yes, I do. Yes. I always want to be the winner. That's what I do. I root for us to win. That's what we all do. She swept her arm around the seat. We root for Micah. She jabbed her finger at the stage. Who do you root for? Stargirl hesitated. She smiled. She threw out her arms. I root for everybody. Kevin, to the rescue thankfully, clapped his hands. Hey, how about this? Maybe it should be official. Maybe one person in the whole district should be appointed to be on, he waved his arm, everybody's side. Stargirl reached over and slapped Kevin's knee. She could wear every school's letter on her sweater. Kevin laughed. She'd have to be as big as the house. Stargirl slapped her own knee. Then no letter at all. That's even better. She looked into the camera. She swiped at the space before. Out with letters. Cheerleader at large. Everybody's cheerleader. Kevin sat at attention, placed his hand over his heart. With liberty and justice and a cheerleader for all. Ebersole snarled into the jury mic. And a nut roll for all. Kevin wagged his finger. That's a no-no, he scolded. No statements from the jury. Questions only. Renee Bozeman snatched the mic. Okay, here's a question. Why did you quit homeschooling? Stargirl's face became serious. I wanted to make friends. Well, you sure have a funny way of showing it, making the whole school mad at you. I wished I had never given in to hot seating Stargirl. Stargirl just stared. Chico filled the screen with her face. Gimme. It was Jennifer St. John reaching for the mic. And out of school, too, you meddle in everybody's business. You stick your nose in whether you're invited or not. Why do you do that? Stargirl had no reply. Her usual impish expression was gone. She looked at Jennifer. She looked at the camera, as if trying to find an answer in the lens. Then she was looking away, looking at the control room. I took my eyes from the monitor, and for a second I thought they met hers through the control room window. I had been wondering when Hillary Kimball would speak up. Now she did. I'm gonna tell you something, girl. You're goofy. You're crazy. Hillary was standing, jabbing her finger at Stargirl, chewing on the mic. You must have come from Mars or something. Kevin raised a timid hand. And don't you tell me no statements, Kevin. Where do you come from? Mars or something? There. Now it's a question. Why don't you go back to where you came from? There's another question. Stargirl's eyes filled the camera. Don't cry, I prayed. There was no stopping Hillary. You want to cheer for other schools? Fine, go there. Don't come to my school. Get out of my school. Other hands were snatching at the mic. I know what your problem is. All this weird stuff you do, it's just to get attention. It's to get a boyfriend. The jurors laughed. They were a mob. Hands grabbed at the mic. Kevin looked anxiously at me. I could do nothing. With all the buttons and switches at my command, I was helpless to change anything on the other side of the glass. I got a simple question for you. What's the matter with you, huh? Huh? Why can't you be normal? Why do you want to be so different? Yeah, is something wrong with us? You got to be so different? Why don't you wear makeup? They were all standing now, jabbing, jutting, shouting, whether they had the mic or not. You don't like us, do you? Do you? Mr. Robineau flipped the master toggle on the console. That's it, he said. I flipped the studio sound switch. That's it. Show's over. The jury went on shouting. Okay, so clearly things have changed and escalated for poor Stargirl here. We'll see how this develops in the next chapters. Let me know if you have any thoughts in the comments. And of course, there was a lot of vocabulary here, especially the dynamic of recording and shooting a TV show. So that's something that was a little bit interrupted with the directions like Chico, camera one. So kind of an interesting style of writing. Let me know if you have any thoughts, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care.